Did you know that on Udemy you can get a certificate of completion once you complete a course? That certificate is in a PDF format. The PDF document will contain your name, the course you completed, the hours of the course, etc. Now, the question is, who generates that certificate? And the answer of that question is Python. Udemy is actually built in Python. So on the backend, Python is what creates the website, and Python does a lot of other tasks, including the generation of this PDF document. So what's my point here? Well, my point is that sometimes we create PDF documents manually by exporting them from a word processing program such as Microsoft Word. But other times, when we want to batch generate multiple PDF documents, as is the case of these certificates, there are many students, so there should be a way to generate these automatically. And that's where you use a programming language. So today I'm going to teach you how to create PDF documents with Python so that a document is created with a run of a button. Specifically, we're going to generate this PDF document that you see on my screen now. So let's call this a notebook. An empty notebook, maybe students can print and they can take notes here after they print it, so they have some guidelines. For example, here is the page about variables. The students then afterwards can take handwritten notes. That would be the purpose of this document. Now, Python's purpose is to generate exactly what you see here. So we have this topic variables, and then you have this empty line, this footer here, variables, another page for variables. So 2 pages for variables for students to take notes on that variables topic. Then we have lists. So that's the title, and we have 1 page, 2 page again with these footers, 3 pages for lists, right? And then we have functions, 1 page for functions, 2, 3, 3 pages for functions. So each of those pages has the footer also, and so on. So we will create this from scratch, but all we need is a CSV file where we could have these data. And this is how the CSV file looks like. So we have the topics, variables, lists, functions, etc. And we have the number of pages that each of these topics should have. So variables had 2 pages, as I showed you already, 2 empty pages, and functions, lists have 3, functions have 3, and so on. So that's what we have as a data source for this app, and we want to generate this document out of that CSV file. I'll give you this CSV file in the next video so that we can generate this PDF document together. And I also wanted to mention that this app is a great opportunity for you to practice Python, especially for loops and pandas, the pandas library, which is used to handle data. So with that, I thank you for following this video and see you in the next one. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we'll start to build our PDF template generation app. So I still have my previous PyCharm project open here. So I'm going to the file menu, go to new project, and then locate a directory where to place our new project. So here I'll create a new folder. This will be app 4. So app 1 was the to-do app, app 2 was a portfolio app, app 3 was the company website app which you built, and now we're looking at app 4, PDF template. So that's an empty folder, and I'm going to open it, and I'll create a new environment using virtualenv. So press on create, and if I press on this window, that will close the previous window and open a new one. So that's the project tab, and I'm going to create a main.py file. Now, in the file resources, you can find the topics.csv file attached. So please get that file and place it in your project directory. So I've copied that file from another folder, so I'm going to paste it in here. Topics.csv, press OK. So that's the CSV file. Try not to change anything because you'll corrupt the file. And so topics and main are in the same directory under my project directory. Now again, to remind you of the output we will generate, I showed you this previously in the previous video. So that's what we're going to generate as part of this app. But for this video, we will only generate the first page manually. Afterwards, we will have all these pages generated automatically. But now let's first create one single page just to introduce you to how we create PDF documents via Python. And as you can imagine, we need a third-party library. We don't have a built-in feature in Python to create PDF documents. But we can use the third-party library called fpdf. So go to Python packages, search for fpdf, and that is the package we're looking for, fpdf. So go to install, or you can install it from the terminal. Make sure that venv is shown here. That means the virtual environment has been activated, and do pip install fpdf. So both ways are fine. Let's import fpdf. Actually, we only need the fpdf class. So this is a class which creates PDF instances. You remember object instances and object types. So this creates a certain type, just like we have string object instances like hello, hi. These are all string types, but they are instances. We will cover this later in further detail. This thing will create PDF object instances, so they are a certain type of object. So how do we create a PDF document? Well, you first create a PDF instance using this class, fpdf. You give the orientation argument to P or L, so P stands for portrait and L would be landscape, so with capital P. Then you give the units, millimeters. I'm going to give to this as units. So what are the units, you might ask? Well, in the page, in the PDF page, we may draw stuff. We may draw rectangles, a line, or we may have to add break lines. So when we do that later on using the appropriate methods that do those things, we're going to give a dimension to those elements. So the dimension will be in millimeters. So we are defining here that all the dimensions will be in millimeters. And the format, let's place this A4. Now there are other formats you can supply here. To find them out, you can right-click over the fpdf class and go to and then go to implementations. And somewhere in here, you can actually search this file where fpdf is defined. You can press Ctrl F or Command F and search for A4. So that should take you to all these formats. You see I provided A4, but you have a letter as well. You can supply that argument either with an uppercase L or a lowercase l, it doesn't matter. And that's the orientation, portrait, P or lower P or landscape or L. So all these are for landscape, but you can keep it shorter if you just say L or P. And so you have different options. Let's go back to our code. So at this stage we have this PDF instance, which is, as you will see, if I print out the type of PDF and I run this code, you're going to see this is this type, fpdf, as I mentioned already. However, this is just a Python object. Now we have to convert it into an actual file on disk, an actual PDF file. But before we do that, we want to add a page, because this document has no pages for now. To do that, you use the add page method. So this method now is a method of PDF object instances, just like strings have, for example, .replace, a method to replace a character in the string. This PDF object instance also has this method to add pages to that document. So once you add a page, then you can output this PDF object to an actual file on disk, output.pdf. Run the script, and you should see an output.pdf file generated on your computer. So that's the previous file I had open. So that's the PDF we have just generated. It's a one-page PDF document, and the page is empty because we haven't added anything. If you want to have anything in that page, after you create a page, you want to use other methods of that PDF object, such as cell. So the way this works now is on a cell basis. Basically, you add text through cells. Let's see how this will come out. Now this cell method will get 5 arguments. I'm just going to write them quickly and then explain you what each of them does. I'll place age to 12, and txt is hello there. We have a line is equal to L, ln is equal to 1, and border is equal to 1. I'll explain each of them, don't worry. And also, if we want to set a font, and I do recommend that because in some computers you may get an error if you don't do this set font method. So let's set the font to Times. Style, if you want bold text, you can say B, otherwise don't place style at all. So remove it as an argument if you want normal text. Size is equal to 12. And I'm going to copy this code and paste it here. For that, in PyCharm you can do Ctrl D or Command D, or just copy this with Ctrl C and then paste it with Ctrl V. So here I'm going to say hi there. So hello there, hi there. That's the code, and I want to execute now. And that will override the previously created PDF document. So if I click this now, we're going to see this. So that's a PDF we generated. Now let me explain you how we came up to this PDF by explaining you the cell methods especially, but also the set font method. So before we add cells, we set the font of those cells. So that means any cell that is created after this line will have that times font and bold and with a size of 12. Now the size is actually in points, not in millimeters. So these units here are only for other purposes which we'll cover later, but not for font. So that's the usual size for font, 12, and then this cell is going to have that font. Now if you wanted this cell to have another font, then you'd have to do another set font methods here and change the font to something else, such as 10. So if I run this and I close this PDF and I open it again, you'll see that the size of this text is different now. So that's about setting the font. Now the cell method here. We have the Y argument, which stands for width. The width, you can see that I've set it to 0. That means the cell is going to expand until the end of the page, so from here up to here. Now let me split these lines because they are too long. So if you were to change this to, for example, 10 and run the script again and open output again, you're going to see that we have this square now. So the square is actually set there from the border argument. When you say border is equal to 1, then you will display these rectangles, these borders around your text. If you say borders is equal to 0 and run the script, double click that PDF again, you'll see that now we simply have the text without the border. But I do recommend that we use the border for now, just to understand where the cell is expanding so we can visually see what's going on. Let's go to the ln argument. What this does is actually this. Let's say I set it to 0 and I execute and I open this again. This is what happens. So ln is actually a break line. So when you set it to 1, you say that the next cell, which is this one here, will be added to the next line. So that's the case when it was 1. But if it's 0, as it is now, that means the next cell will be added after the width ends. So that means 10 is up to here, so that's 10 basically, a size of 10 points. And so after 10, the next string begins, which is from here up to here somewhere. Therefore, it is recommended to keep ln always at 1, so that you go to the next line when you add the next cell. So let me run this again, double click the PDF file, and there we go. Width is also recommended to be set at 0, so run again. There we go. Then we have the height. The height is recommended to be set at the same size with the font size, 1212. You see that if we increase this to 24 and we run again, you see that that's the size basically of the cell. You can see the borders help you to visualize the cell area. So 12 would be more meaningful since it is near to the size of the text itself. Then we have the txt argument, the most important argument here, which contains the actual value of the cell, obviously. And then we have the line argument, which is set to L here, which means that the text is aligned left, so it starts from here, from the left side of the argument. And yeah, that's about adding text to a PDF document. I'll remove the border arguments and run again. And yeah, so that's the final text that I meant to have here. I'll remove the style argument as well to keep the next text just normal. Run again, double click output.pdf. So that's normal text, that's text in bold. So that's how you create a PDF document with one page. If you want more pages, what you can do here, you can copy all that code and paste it here. Run, double click output again, and we have 2 pages. So what I just did is that I added this code, so add page with that method and then add the cells again to the next page. So anything that we add here is added to the next page. Now the question is, how do we create documents with many pages? Do we keep adding code as I did here? Well, the answer is no. We need to use a for loop. That's what we're going to create in the next video. So we're going to get data from here and create a PDF document automatically with those data. See you there. Hey, I'm glad to have you back in this video. Here you'll learn how to go from this CSV file to this PDF file. So basically we will use Python to read these data and produce a PDF file with these data. So this is a CSV file. If you were to open this in a spreadsheet program such as Excel, it would be looking something like this. You don't have to open them in Excel, but this is how they look like in a nicer format. So how can we create a PDF file where each of these rows is a header in a PDF page? For example, variables. You see variables is the first row. This is just an index, 1, 2, 3, etc. And then we have 2 pages for variables. So variables will have this page and it will have an empty page as well. Then we have lists. Lists will have 3 pages. So 1 here, 2, 3, and then the next item functions, which is here. So how can we do that? Well, the answer is using a for loop. Whenever you want to use rows in a CSV file, you may need to use a for loop. So this time we may need to loop over these items, and we do that by first loading the items as a data frame, as a pandas data frame. So for that we will import pandas. Usually we import pandas as PD. This is a common practice among programmers. So if you browse the web, if you see other programmers' code, this is a convention. It's not a must, but you'll see that, for example, once you import this, then people use it as, let's say, df is equal to pd.readcsv instead of using pandas.readcsv. So this is the short form for pandas, and you can write here any name. So this is just a variable and it represents the pandas library. And let's install pandas. So I'll just install pandas. You can do that using the terminal, pip install pandas, or the Python packages menu here. As you know, pandas is a data analysis library, so we can parse the CSV data easily with pandas, and specifically we use the readcsv method for that. And here we want to supply the path to the file which contains the CSV data. Topics.csv is the name in my case, so that file should be in the same directory with your main.py file or in the root directory. So we imported these lines, we create the PDF object, and then we create the pandas data frame object, and then we will add pages. But instead of adding pages like this by writing the code over and over again, we will write a for loop here. The for loop will consist of this. Let me import pandas here. Then we create the data frame, and then we will iterate over that pandas data frame. We will loop over that data frame for index row in df.iter rows with double R. So that will give us access to each row of the data frame, and it also gives us access to the index. So we have 2 variables, index and row, where index is the index itself, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and don't confuse that with this. This is the order column. So we have the order column, the topic column, and the pages column. But there is another hidden column which contains the index which starts from 0. So 0 is the index for the first row, 1 is the index for the second row, and so on. So let me press the upper arrow key on my keyboard to call that loop again. And if you print the row here, go down here to the last row and press enter, then you'll get the rows. So let's go to the very first row to see what it looks like. There we go. So the first row has an order of 1, the topic is variables, and the pages is 2. And then we have the name, which is actually the index, so 0, and the type is object. So this row doesn't have a specific time such as a date or a time or other objects, so it is simply object. This last line is not really important, so all we need is these 3 here. So let me call that loop again, and what we will need first is the topic. So each row is an actual object, which is like a dictionary, and it allows us to use this dictionary syntax. So to access the key topic, if I press enter here, then we will extract only the topics. So you see variables and lists and functions, so that corresponds to this. So now that we know how to do it, we go to our script and we say for index row in df.iter_rows with parentheses. We add a page, so we're gonna have a new page for each row. Once we add the page, we will set the font, so let me indent this under the for loop. So everything that you indent under the for loop will be executed X number of times. In our case, this will be as many times as we have rows here, so 39 times. So this code will be executed 39 times, 39 pages will be created. I know that we have multiple pages for each topic, but let's keep it simple for now. Let's add 1 page per topic for now. So we set the font, we create a cell. Now, the cell will not be this text anymore. We will inject the topic here, but let's keep it like that for now, and then we'll change it later. And I'm going to remove this other line. So as you remember, this code created this PDF with this text hello there and with that text hi there. So let me just remove that hi there text and keep only the hello there text, which is created by these 2 lines. And then I'll remove these other lines. So now we only have to have this at page once, because the loop will execute it multiple times for us. Right. Yeah, I'm going to execute this. Run. And output.pdf has been generated, has overwritten the previous output.pdf file. So because we have this, and let me open that. So we have hello there again, and so on. This PDF document has 39 pages. Now, as I promised you, let me remove this hello there string and replace it with row topic. So in our Python console, row topic gave us each topic. In this console here, we printed them out. We printed these topics, these strings. These are just strings. We just printed them out. But in this case, we want to write them in the PDF. So in a for loop, you can do whatever you want and not simply print out stuff in the command line. So with that, let me execute again. Open the PDF file, and there we go. Variables and lists and functions, etc. Let me improve the font. So output the size to 24, and also I'll apply a set text color method to set the text to gray. And so these are the values for RGB. So that's how you define the color of text. And this combination, so 100 for red, 100 for green, and 100 for blue, so RGB, this combination of color channels gives us gray. So if I execute again, the output, you see the color is somehow gray and the font is bigger. You can give here any number from 0 to 254 for each of these values, and depending on the combination you get different colors. So if you simply want red, you do 254 for red, 0 for green, and 0 for blue. Run. Open the PDF file and you see that this is right. If you want blue, you'd say 0 here and 254 for blue. Run. And you get blue text. Same goes for green. You can try that yourself. So I'll just go to 100, 100, 100 to get that gray color. Let's add a line after the text, after the topic text. So basically I want to add a line somewhere in here. We need to provide coordinates for that line. So we need to provide x1 coordinate, y1 coordinate, x2 and y2. So what are these? Well, x1 and y1 will be the coordinates of the starting point of the line, and x2, y2 will be the coordinates of the end point. The value of x1 will be the distance from the left border of the PDF document up to here in millimeters, because that's the units we have defined in the FPDF line, in this line in here. And y1 will be this distance. The same goes here. x1 will be the distance from here up to here, and y1 will be the same distance from here up to here. So basically, we're talking about having something like 10 for x1, 17 for y1, and then x2 we said that it's gonna be this distance. So let's say that would be 200. Since this is an A4 format, the distance from here up to the right border is 210. So 200 would be a good number, and y should be 17 in order to have that straight line. So y is this distance, and the same distance is for the last point of the line. Yep, so let me execute this. Open output.pdf, and this is what we got. So we're somewhere there, but we need to change something. What do we need to change here? Well, you could change perhaps the y to make it larger, the value of y. So to have the line further down, we can try 20, 20, or perhaps 22, 22 for y. Run again. Yeah, so this looks good. Perhaps 21 would be ideal. 21. Run again. Output.pdf. Yeah, that looks good. So that's the case for all the headers. Let me have some space here to have the style correctly. And that's the code. Let's commit the changes. First, we need to enable version control integration. And with git, then commit. So this will be the first commit, initial commit as the message of the commit. And we haven't added any of the files to the repository, so let's go here. We need to add main, output, and topic.csv. So right click, go to git, add, and they will be colored in green. We also need to create a .git ignore file, add that to the repository, so that file is also in green. .idea, and then folders will be excluded. And then we're ready to go and commit the changes. Make sure all these 4 files are selected and press on commit. If you want to change the commit message, you can write, for example, day 24, and then check the amend box, and press on Amend Commit. In the Git tab, you'll see that the commit message has been changed to that message. So thanks for following this. We will go ahead and add multiple pages for each of these topics in the next video. So let's do that. Hey, in this video you will learn a new Python core skill, and this has to do with for loops, so don't miss this video. So this is the problem we have now. We have generated this output.csv file, but the project requirements is to have a PDF file where each of these topics have multiple pages. So currently there's only one page for variables. You see, variables has one page, lists have one page, functions have one page, but what we have to do is we should have 2 pages for variables, 3 pages for lists, 3 pages for functions, and so on. Which means we should have this page for variables and one more empty page, so 2 pages in total for variables. Two pages for variables, 3 pages for lists, so this page and 2 more empty pages for lists, and so on. So how can we do that? Again, we need to use for loops. But where do we iterate? What do we iterate? In this case, we iterated over this iterows. But now the input data we have is these numbers. So how can we do something 3 times? So let's say we have x is equal to 3. That's the information we have. How can we print out hello 3 times? Well, you can do that using for I in range x. Print hello. Execute. And there we go. Hello, hello, hello. Similarly, in our code, we need to add more pages. So instead of printing hello, we need to write here something like pdf.addPage. But let me explain you this line to make sure you understand what's going on here. Range is a Python type. It resembles lists, and you can use it like this here, for example, range 3, and we get this. So range actually creates a list sort of object, which has, in this case, it has 3 values, 0, 1, and 2, so 3 integers. So if you say my range is range 3, my range is that again, but you can convert it to a list. And you'll see that it has these 3 items, 0, 1, 2. So what we're actually doing here in this for loop is basically we are iterating over that sort of list. Actually, we're iterating over the range, but it's basically the same thing. We're iterating over an object which has 3 items, because x is 3. So if I change x to 5, execute again, we'll get hello printed out 5 times. And you can also print out I here to understand what I actually is. And you'll see that we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I represents each item in the range. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 items. Again, you can use list, range 5. So that's basically the same code we used up here, but here we store the range in a variable. You don't have to do that, so it's basically the same thing. So that's the list we get, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You will notice that 5 is not included in the range, so please keep that in mind. Still though, the range has 5 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, but they start from 0. Yep, so that was quite a lecture about ranges. Now we need to go to our code and use ranges in our real life example to create this PDF document. But we should write that loop inside the other for loop, because this is what we're doing here. We are going through each of the items of the topics.csv file. We add the header, but then we should stop in each iteration. So in the first iteration, we are working on the variables row, so we should stop here at this iteration, you see, and create another for loop which iterates over row. Guess what we should place here? Pages. That would be the correct answer. So row pages. Sorry, I missed the I here, for I in range, row pages. So row pages will give us that number. So in the first iteration, that would be equal to 2. So we are creating a range of 2 items. And we will add here pdf.addPage, that method, to add 2 more pages. Let me execute this. Open output.pdf and see what we got. So variables, let me zoom out. We have 1 page here, we have another page here, and we have a third one. Actually, we needed 2 pages, not 3. So 2, but we have 3 here. So 1 was added from this with a header. You see, we add a page, we add the header variables in that page, and then we iterate over that, but this will add 2 more pages. So this is equal to 2. That means the range will have the items 0, 1. So 2 items, 2 pages. We can subtract 1 from this. So that means 2 minus 1, that would be 1. We iterate over variables only once. So then we would have 3 minus 1, 2, and so on. Every number would be adjusted. So let me execute this again. Open output.pdf, and there we go. We have 1 empty page for variables and another here. So 2 and 3 for lists, and everything is working fine now. And that concludes this video. Let me commit the changes. So this is day 24, and this would be add more pages for each topic. Commit. And that was the skill. So the skill, the core Python skill here, is to learn how to iterate over ranges. Plus, you also learned how to create a nested for loop. So we have the main for loop here, and we have the nested for loop here. So this is like working on your kitchen, and you are giving plates to your guests on the table. So first, you iterate over your plates where you have placed them. So you give 1 empty plate to each guest. But as you give the first empty plate to the first guest, so that is the first iteration of the main for loop, as you give the first empty plate, then you create another nested for loop where you take spoons from the pot where you have beans or something else, and then you place several spoons with beans in that first plate. And then once you have finished placing all the beans to the plate for the first guest, then you go over the second iteration of the main loop. You get a second empty plate, give it to the second guest, and then you go to the nested loop to get that spoon and pour more beans to that plate. And then once you have completed the beans for the second plate, you go to the third plate, and so on and so forth. That's what we're doing here as well. That's a nested loop. So with that, thanks a lot, see you later. Hey, in the previous video we added multiple pages for each topic. In this video we will add a footer for each of these pages. So this is supposed to be a template for taking notes, so people can print out this on a paper and they can take notes on each topic. So it becomes necessary for people to know which page they are on when working on this document. Therefore, we will add some footers for each page. So for the first page will be variables here, then lists here, lists, etc. Let's do that. So we have two add page methods, one here and one here. The first method adds the parent page. Let's call it the master page. So that is a page which contains a header. So this first page is added by that first method. And then the pages after that, so this page, is added by that method, the second method. So we need to add a footer in this main loop. And to do that, we first need to add 278 break lines. So ln adds empty break lines. So that means if you enter 1 here, that means the size of the break line will be 1 millimeters. But 278 will be 278 millimeters. So after that first text here, 278 millimeters should be around here. In total, the height of this A4 format is 298 millimeters. So 278 should be somewhere in here. So once we add those break lines, then we add the text, the footer. So for that we can add some font. So set the font first, family times, style, let's make it italic. The size should be 8, so it's just a footer, should be a small size. Let's set the text color to 180, 180, 180, that would be some sort of light gray. And lastly, pdf.cell, width 0, height, let it be 10. The text is going to be row topic, and we align it to the right using this R string. Yeah, let's execute this. Execute output.pdf, and yeah, let's see what we've got. So variables is down here. It's not exactly what we want. For lists, list is here as well. So it's not working correctly because we need to do something else. We need to configure the main document. So after you have written the fpdf class here, then enter a new line and to pdf dot, so pdf is the pdf object which we created in here, so that's the same variable. Set auto page break, and this should have this auto argument, so that should be set to false with a margin of 0. So what we just did here is that the pages should not be broken automatically, so we set it to false because by default this was true. So with that configuration, I'll run the script again, open output.pdf and check if those lines are there. They are not. That means the value of break lines here is too big. So let's try 270. Run again. Open output, and I can see variables here almost at the border of the page. You can see but the value of this ln should be slightly smaller. So run again, open output, and yeah, this time looks good. Here we have variables, for the first page, but for the second page of variables, the footer is not there. Same for lists. List is here, but for the second page and for the third page, it's not there. That is because here we added these lines, so they set the footer. Let's add a comment here to know what's going on. So they set the footer for the master page. To set the footer for the other pages as well, we should copy this code and paste it in the nested loop. Just there. Run the code, open the PDF document, and see what we have. So variables here, but then for the next one, we have that somewhere in here. That is not what we expected, and that's because I forgot to add the pdf.ln line, which is actually part of the code, so this comment should be on top here. So let me do some housekeeping here. So that's the code that sets the footer, right? And that is the code that sets the header. So the header, the footer for the main for loop, and then we have the footer for the other pages. So this should be here as well. Yeah, so that's a complete code. That is the same as here. So let's run the script. Open output.pdf. Variables is here for the first page and here for the second page. But in the second page variable, the footer is a bit too far from the border here. That's because for this page we have 270 millimeters from that point up to here, but for this other page the distance starts from the very first point somewhere in here. So therefore we should adjust this number to something else. So that should be something like the height of this plus that, which is around 277. Let's try 277. Run. Open again. And yeah, now it looks fine. So there we have variables for the first page, and there we have variables for the second page as well. Same goes for lists, and so on. So that's how you generate a PDF document with Python. That was quite an advanced case of generating a PDF document, and you did learn a ton of skills here, especially about for loops. Let me commit the changes. So that's day 24. We changed the main.py file, output.pdf was changed consequently. So the message here will be add footers. Commit the changes, and that's it. Thanks a lot for following. See you later. Hi, in this video I'll hand you the task for today's exercise. The task consists of improving the program we built today. So today we built a program which generated this PDF template, this PDF document. Now your task for this exercise is to generate this PDF document instead. So the only difference here is that the document on the left, which you need to generate, has horizontal lines. The other elements of the document are the same as the previous document. The lines should be 10 millimeters apart from each other, although you can choose whatever distance you want, so that's not a strict requirement. So feel free to have any distance between the lines, but you should generate a document with lines, as you see here. So remember the core Python concept we learned today, and keeping that in mind, I wish you good luck. See you in the next video where I'll explain you my solution. Hi, in this video I'll show you the solution to the exercise I handed to you in the previous video. So the task was to generate this PDF document. Now let me quickly show you how I will generate that document. So we have this for loop which generates the master pages, which is these pages with headers, and then we have these empty pages which are generated by this for loop. So we need to add lines in both these for loops. Now currently in the code we only have one line added in the first for loop, which corresponds to that line. So we can use the same line method to add multiple lines. But for that, inside this for loop, so while we are working on this page, we iterate with a nested for loop, let's say for I in range, and there you can create a range such as 20 to 9, 8, 10. So we are saying to start the lines at 20 up to 298, so this is the y coordinate, and every 10 millimeters. So we use pdf.line and we use 10, so that is x1, then we have y1, we use I for that. I'll explain why I'm writing these. 200 and I again. So 10 and I. I in the first iteration will be 20. So this will be 10, 20, 220. So that means we'll start at 10. Let me put this in here. So 10 is the x. So from here up to here it's 10 millimeters. And then I will be 20. That means from here up to here is 20, and then we have 200, so from here up to here is 200, and then we have 20 again for y. And that will be repeated every 10 times, so the next y will be 20, and then 30, and then 40, so we will have lines here every 10 millimeters, so the step here is 10, this number here. That's a step. And I would actually prefer to write y here as a variable instead of I, so that makes more sense. It makes the code more readable. We know that this is y now. And yeah, I'll run this, and that will generate an output.pdf file overwriting the existing output.pdf file, and we've got this. So we have two lines here, therefore we can remove this line method. That creates the first line, so we don't need that since we are creating multiple lines with this for loop. And now we do the same for the other pages. So somewhere in here at the end of the nested loop, you see the nested loop. Let me close that to give you more space. So if I run that, check output again, and that's the PDF. So we have horizontal lines in each page, and the headers and the footers stay there where they were. So that is how you add lines in every page, and I hope that this helps you understand nested loops even deeper. Let me commit these changes, day 24, exercise, add lines, commit. And that's it for today. Thanks a lot, I'll see you tomorrow. Hi, in this video you're going to learn how to make your code look better. You'll make your code look better by following the Python recommendations for writing Python code. And these recommendations are written in PEP 8. So PEP 8 is the style guide for Python code. And it lists a series of recommendation suggestions that every Python programmer should follow to have the code look better, more readable, and also to have your code readable by other programmers. So these recommendations set some standards. And so this is called the PEP 8 style guide, and you can find it on this URL. So peps.python.org pep-0008. In this guide, you can see all the recommendations here on the table of contents. So if you click any of them, it will bring you to that particular recommendation. So it's one page, but with multiple recommendations. Now, I do not recommend you to go and read these recommendations because some of them are very, very advanced and you don't really need to know every detail in the recommendations. So instead, please follow this video. I'll mention all these recommendations and I will be showing you how we have applied these recommendations so far in our apps. For example, here I'm opening the weather forecast app, which we built already, and I'll be telling you all the recommendations of PEP8 and mentioning them in here. So I didn't want to cover PEP8 before because it was too early, and I don't want to cover it much later in the course also because it's a good time to learn it now so that you don't get bad practices, so that you don't learn bad practices on writing good looking code. Right, so let's start with the first recommendation of PEP8. The first recommendation is about indentation. I've already mentioned to you that you might have more than one space to create indentation. However, PEP8 recommends to use 4 spaces always. So PEP8 is about recommending the style. Any of these recommendations are about to improve the style, and these recommendations do not affect the functionality of the code. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 space or 4, your code will work the same, but with 4 spaces it will look better and it will be in line with the standards, so every programmer then would have the same amount of indentation, of spaces in indentation. And that creates a good community, a programmers community online, which will share each other's codes. So that's what PEP style is about. So that was about indentation. Spaces or tabs. It's also possible to create indentation using 1 tab. So 1 tab is equal to 4 spaces, but the recommended character is space. So please use 4 spaces and not tabs. The next recommendation is that the maximum number of characters per line should be 79. So for example, this line here should have around 50 characters, so that is fine. While this line in here has around 79 or 80 characters. So the number of characters includes also white spaces from here up to here. This recommendation sets the maximum line of characters at 79 because that's the optimal length of a line, considering that you might be working with 2 code editors side by side. And that's a good size to fit both editors, but you should have lines which are not too long in order to be able to see both areas side by side. Now, there are also recommendations in PEP8 that sometimes you may have to avoid one of these recommendations when you see that it's really necessary. For example, when I make videos, I do ignore that maximum number of characters because I want to show you as many lines as possible in the video. Because if I was to split this to make these 2 lines, that means I'm not showing you the other lines, so that would take some space and it would show unnecessary space here on the right side. So I have to optimize my code for videos. Now, how do you know how many characters you are having while coding? Well, if you notice this vertical line in PyCharm, this line is at the point where you have 79 characters. So from here to here, there should be 79 characters. So this square bracket is the 80th character. And this vertical line can be configured in PyCharm preferences. If you go to editor and then go to general and then go to appearance, and here you can see this checkbox. If you uncheck it and you press on apply, you can remove that line. And you can also, let me display it again, you can also go to code style, and here you can set the number of characters you want that line to appear at. So currently this is 79 by default. Right, that's about the maximum number of characters per line. The next recommendation is about line breaks. For example, if we wanted to break this line here, and this line has this math operator, a division operator here, it is recommended to split the line before the math operator. So like that, instead of like this. Either way, the code would work fine, but the style guide PEP8 recommends to split it at this point. And if you had some other operators here, for example plus this or that, again you'd split it before the operator. So you'd have a math expression split across different lines. Again, this would be necessary when the line is too long, right? If it's less than 79 characters, you don't have to split it. But if you have to split it, please keep in mind that it's better to split it before the character. The next recommendation is about blank lines, such as this here or this. So it is recommended to use blank lines between blocks of code which are somehow related. For example, we have these import statements in here, so it does make sense to have a blank line in here and then create the Streamlit widgets in here. And then after we create the Streamlit widgets, we have another blank line. Then we have a conditional block, and inside the conditional block you can also have blank lines to separate other logical parts of the code, such as this if conditional block here, this one as well, and so on. When you have functions in the code, such as this getData function, which we have here in backend.py, the function should have two blank lines around itself. So one blank line here, two blank line here, also one blank line here too. Right, the next recommendation is about the import statements. This is quite obvious. You should have your import statements at the top of your file. So even though this import plotly line could also work if you imported plotly just before you use plotly in here, this is not recommended. So you should have all your import statements here on top, as you see here. String quotes. As you might know, you can use double quotes or single quotes around strings. It's fine to use either one, but it's good to be consistent. So PEP8 recommends to be consistent with your choice. However, when you write multi-line strings, such as this one in here, with triple quotes, it is recommended to use double quotes instead of single quotes for these multi-strings. So I hope that's clear. The next recommendation is about the use of white space. White space is not necessary in the code. For example, let's look here at this line. This line would also work if you had no spaces around the assignment operator. So this would also work, but this is not recommended. So it is recommended to have white space around operators such as this assignment operator here, this equality operator here. You see it's wrapped with 2 white spaces from each side. Here as well. However, inside brackets such as square brackets and curly brackets and parentheses, the use of spaces is more limited. For example, here you see that we don't use any white space around this sky conditions name. So it should be directly inside the parentheses. Then we have this image paths, comma, space, and then we have the other argument. So inside parentheses, you should have 1 space after the comma, but no space before the comma. So this also follows the English grammar rules. Space should be used around operators, such as here, but not when these operators are inside parentheses. For example, here, you shouldn't use space for this operator. In the case of curly brackets, which are used to declare dictionaries, you should have a space after the colon, but not before the colon. So this here is a space, and then after the comma you have a space, and then after the colon you also have a space. And that's about the use of white space. The next recommendation is related to comments. So comments, as you know, have to start with a hashtag, and that is not a PEP 8 recommendation, that is a syntax rule. But the recommendation says that you should have a space after the hashtag. So this doesn't affect the functionality, but it is part of PEP 8. Even PyCharm, for example, if I remove that space, PyCharm will recommend me that I should reformat this file. So we have that underline in yellow, which has to do with the style of your code. So if I press on reformat, PyCharm will correct that line. So comments should start with a space after the hashtag, and they should be complete sentences, and they should start with a capital letter. It's also possible to have comments inline. For example, I can add a comment in here, but this is not recommended. So you should try to avoid having comments in here, such as this is the place. It's better to comment that line here on top. This is the place, for example. Right. Documentation strings. Documentation strings are multi-line strings which are written inside functions. They should be written immediately after the function's first line, and so these should talk about what this function does. Get data from the OpenWeather API. You can have multiple lines. The OpenWeather API needs an API key. The first line of the docstring should be in the same line with the first triple quotes, and the second triple quotes should be in a separate line. That's what the PEP 8 recommendation says about docstrings. Next is naming conventions, and this is quite important. Variable names, including function names, should be in lowercase underscore style, which means something like this or that. So you shouldn't use capital letters in naming your variables or your functions. And you should use underscore. For example, you shouldn't write get data without an underscore in between, because that makes this name unreadable. So there should be an underscore between these two words. So that includes variables as well, but variables which are constants, for example, this API key here is also known as a constant variable because this will not be changing throughout the course of this program. It's always the same, it's a constant. We are not reassigning anything. So in that case, constants should be declared here after the import statements, and they should have names in capital letters, so uppercase underscore style, as you see in here. Class names. Later on in the course we will learn about classes. And classes also should be given names by you when you create them, and the style for class names is the camel case style. Or perhaps you'll create a browser chatbot class, so this style without underscore and with capital letters for each word which makes up that name. Right, we'll talk later about classes. And that's about the recommendations of PEP 8. So I'm sure that most of these you knew already, but it's good to be sure to be clear about them. And I hope this is useful, and I'll see you later.